The Little Juggler. Once upon a time, there was a really little juggler. He was the youngest in the whole juggling guild, and also the smallest, but that didn't matter, because he was every bit as good at his art as the older and bigger jugglers. He had the typical juggler's shoes in 3 colors, a juggler's cap with 3 points, and a juggler's robe, in which he could hide a few things for little magic tricks. He could do cartwheels and balance on a rope. He was good at juggling 5 balls. Yes, 5 balls. And he could walk on his hands and climb stairs or ladders as if it were nothing. Even his name had a special ring to it. Willard Silverstone. Well, his mother had given him the name Williard because he was the son of Will, his father. Williard was a way of saying little Will, similar to how Willie or laddie is used in some parts of the land. However, Williard had given himself the surname Silverstone when he decided to become a juggler. The Silverstones had all been famous jugglers, and he wanted to honor them with his skills. So he called himself Willard Silverstone during his performances. That was now his stage name. He wanted to become famous, and over the years, he succeeded admirably. Yes, you may not believe it, but he had even been to the royal court when there was a fair there, and the princess was celebrating her birthday in the castle. She had discovered the little juggler Willard Silverstone at the fair and asked her father, the king, if he would allow this funny little juggler to come to the castle. In the afternoon, lots of children were invited to her birthday party, and the little juggler was to give a performance. Well, the king watched our little clown and his tricks from the royal carriage at the fair for a while, also took a liking to our little juggler, and allowed the princess to invite him. The princess quickly sent a servant over to him and ordered the little jester to come to the royal castle with all his equipment for the afternoon's entertainment to perform at her children's birthday party. Williard listened to what the servant had to say. The servant kept pointing towards the royal carriage, which was still waiting opposite the fairground. Williard looked up, pulled off his juggler's cap, and bowed in the direction of the royal carriage to indicate his agreement to the deal. He was happy to accept the invitation, although he was a little nervous. He had never been to the royal castle before and didn't really know how to behave there. "Tell Her Royal Highness the Princess that the little juggler Willard Silverstone will gladly accept her invitation." Now the servant bowed slightly to Williard, said, "Very well," turned on his heel, and disappeared in the direction of the royal carriage. The little juggler then turned his attention back to his fairground audience and performed his tricks and stunts. But in his mind, he was already at the royal palace, and he secretly tried out 1 or 2 of the antics he wanted to perform that afternoon in front of the market visitors. If the people were enthusiastic, he made a note of it. If the applause was rather restrained, he knew that he would not perform it in the afternoon. He would have to work on these acts to bring them to perfection. A good knife thrower would not stand in front of an assembled audience and then miss the mark. So he had to practice, practice, and practice again. And when it came to practicing, Williard always showed iron discipline. At lunchtime, Williard treated himself to a hot meal at the fair, and then rested for a while in the shade of an old lime tree. Then it was already time to head to the royal castle. Williard had to walk, because taxis and buses did not exist at that time. Yes, a horse of his own would have been ideal, but Williard's income was nowhere near enough for that. A horse like that was expensive and would cost a small fortune to keep. Well, thought Williard, maybe in a year or 2. When he arrived at the castle gate, there were 2 guards standing there with huge halberds, and they didn't let just anyone in. But when the little juggler gave his name, one of the guards called a servant to bring the little juggler into the courtyard, where the little princess's party was to take place. Williard saw a large group of children, all sitting at small tables on small chairs, waiting patiently. Then Williard noticed servants rushing back and forth. Everyone seemed excited. Where could she be? Williard overheard the sentence and promptly asked the next servant, who was supposed to distribute hot chocolate and cherry cake to the children. Who are they looking for so excitedly? Haven't you heard? The princess has disappeared. They're already turning the whole castle upside down. With that, the servant hurried off again, probably to fetch more hot chocolate or cake for the guests from the royal kitchen. Good heavens, the princess has disappeared. What will become of my performance? Thought Williard. But he also thought, and if there's no performance, there'll be no payment, so I'd have been better off staying at the fair. Williard didn't think twice. Something had to be done, and quickly, before the many guests became restless. As a true juggler, Willard Silverstone was, of course, capable of bringing lost and missing, hidden and forgotten things back to light. This had already earned him many a cheer at the markets, not to mention a few pennies, thalers, or even ducats. But how should he proceed here? He was unfamiliar with the castle, and an unknown juggler would certainly not be allowed to look into all the rooms, halls, cellars, hallways, chests, and alcoves. He took his rucksack off his back and rummaged through his juggler's utensils. It must be here somewhere. There it was, his divining rod. It was a very special divining rod that could not only find water, but also whatever the diviner chose to focus on. Willard Silverstone thought to himself, the many castle servants have probably already searched for the princess in all sorts of places, and so far, obviously, without success. So Williard was left with only the impossible places to search, the nooks and crannies where no one in their right mind would look for a princess. In a biscuit tin, for example, or a snuff box. Yes, you're laughing. But you wouldn't believe what Williard had already found in all those impossible places. Just the other day, he found the hospital key in a wine barrel of fine Burgundy. But that's another story. The little juggler Willard Silverstone held the divining rod tightly in both hands and concentrated on the beautiful princess. For quite a while, he felt nothing. But the more he concentrated, the more the divining rod in his hands began to tremble and vibrate. Williard slowly turned in a circle to find out in which direction the divining rod wanted to pull him. There, now the direction was clear, and it led straight out of the castle, then around it. With his eyes half closed, concentrating on the slightest change in direction of the divining rod, Williard forgot the world around him and pursued only his search. He did not notice that first one servant, then another, then the royal chef, then the guards, and finally even the king himself were following him, for they had already searched everywhere desperately, but unfortunately without success. Williard did not let himself be deterred. He had almost circled the entire castle when the divining rod jerked sharply to the left towards a hill. They walked around the hill, and soon everyone saw the scene. The princess was stuck in a large hole in the ground, trapped between the roots of a tree. Only her legs were sticking out, and a faint whimpering could be heard. Williard had found the princess. The men fetched ladders, shovels, ropes, buckets, and everything else they could grab in their excitement. Soon the princess was freed, and she told them how her favorite ball had fallen from the battlements. She wasn't supposed to be playing up there, but today was her birthday, and no one had been paying close attention. She remembered where the ball had rolled and went down the many steps from the battlements to the small gate in the garden that led outside through the castle walls. She found the hill, but the hole where the ball had rolled was deep, so she bent over and tried to grab the ball with her hands. Finally, she had it, holding it tightly with both hands. But that meant she couldn't get out of the hole on her own. First, she tried everything she could. Then she shouted as loud as she could. Finally, she cried. If only she had said she wanted to get her ball, someone would have sent someone with her. But now, no one could even guess where she had been, until after a long time, someone pulled her out by her legs. Then she knew they had found her. Yes, and you won't believe who finally found you," her father, the king, said to her. "No, I couldn't see it." "Well, there stands your lifesaver, the little juggler from the fair." The princess went over to the little juggler, hugged him, embraced him, and kissed him on the cheeks to thank him for saving her. "Little juggler," said the king, "you found my daughter, whom we had searched for everywhere. Who knows what would have happened if you hadn't been there? I would like to show my royal gratitude. Since I am indebted to you, I will grant you a wish. What would make you happy?" "Oh, your majesty, it was nothing," said Williard modestly. "But if you want to make me happy, you see, I am always traveling on Shank's pony, and if I had a little horse, I could also show my juggling skills in other villages and towns of your kingdom. You shall receive a good horse from the royal stables, and as long as you have the horse, the village blacksmith shall always maintain and replace its horseshoes, and throughout the kingdom, your little horse shall be given oats and hay to eat free of charge, as all royal horses with the royal coat of arms receive. And you shall come to us every year on the princess's birthday and show us your latest tricks." The little juggler, Willard Silverstone, bowed deeply and politely. "Your Majesty, I am very grateful for your generosity." "Well," said the king, "I think we have kept our guests waiting long enough. Come, little princess, we will quickly dress you and comb your hair, then you can join your guests and the little juggler can give his performance. After the performance, the juggler will come before the royal administration and receive his fee for his performance, if the guests enjoyed it." The king laughed. Everyone made their way back to the castle. Well, on that day, the little juggler Willard Silverstone had made his fortune. He left the castle with a small bag full of gold ducats, sitting high on his little horse with the royal brand. Now he had a traveling companion. He christened the animal Swiftwind and was welcomed throughout the land as the princess's savior. His horse was always well cared for, and from then on, he appeared at the castle once a year, always on the little princess's birthday. Who knows, maybe another birthday is coming up soon, and he is already on his way there.